Hello, I'm Ariam, and this is my reading vlog for Adventure in Aeldia and Buzzwordathon of July 2025. So the prompts for each one are, for Buzzwordathon, it is technology in the cover and punctuation mark in the title, and for Adventure in Aeldia, it is a book published before you were born and read only in the PM hours. So for the prompt of technology on the cover and read only in the PM hours, I'm going to read the newest Magic Treehouse book that literally came out yesterday, and that's in the United States, so in Israel it came out today, basically, and that is Sea Otter Sunrise by Mary Pope Osborne. And I know it sounds really stupid to be so excited about a Magic Treehouse book, but I'm really excited. So if you don't know, the Magic Treehouse books are early chapter books where you have the two siblings, Jack and Annie. They find a treehouse that has books in it, and when they point a picture of a book and say, I wish I could go there, it takes them to the time and place. Now, I know nothing about this book. I only seen the cover, so it had, and the title. So on the cover it has Jack and Annie in the beach, in the ocean, with scuba diving suits, and it's called Sea Otter Sunrise. So obviously they're going to be sea otters, and I'm assuming, and the last few things that they've been doing have been saving animals, so I'm assuming this is going to be another Save the Animals one, and I am so excited. I really hope it's good. Okay, so it's been a bit, but I read, it's like been an hour and a half since I last talked to you, but it only took me 15 minutes to read the book. It was definitely shorter, and I do feel like she's getting tired of writing the books, but it was, I do think it was better, much better than the last book, which was published. Not the last book I read, which was not the last book that was published, but the last book that was published. Wow, this is a really bad angle. Okay, let's start again. Hi, it's been like an hour and a half, but I actually read the book in 15 minutes. It was very short. It was short even for a Magic Treehouse book. It was still 10 chapters, but the chapters were like incredibly short, like 2-3 pages. But I still really enjoyed it. I think it was better than the last book that came out. Not the last book I read, but the last book that had been published. I think it was better. The ending did annoy me a little bit because it was a little too wrapped up. Everything is good. Like, realistically, there would be no huge changes like that. But I did really like the book. In the end, I was a bit skeptical at first, but then I ended up really liking it, and I thought the characters were really fun, and it was a fun plot. So, yeah. It was good. And now I just have to go and write for my character who I read for in Adventure in Aeldia. Because I was lazy, I didn't say what Adventure in Aeldia is. So the Buzzwordathon, you probably understood that you get 2 prompts, one for the title and one for something in the title, and one for something on the cover. But the Adventure in Aeldia is part of a larger readathon called Aurelian by Book Roast on YouTube, and basically it takes place mainly in September and April, and in those months your character goes to Magical University and you pretend, and like for each class that they have you read a book or multiple books in the September one. But Adventure in Aeldia is like a year-long adventure where your character goes on this adventure, and for each prompt of adventuring, you read a book. So it should be 1 a month, and because I have 2 characters, I read 2 books. So for this month, like I said, the Buzzwordathon prompt for the title is to have a punctuation mark in the title, and the Adventure in Aeldia prompt is to explore ruins, read something that was published before you were born. So I'm reading A Prefix Uncle by P.J. Wodehouse, which has an apostrophe in prefix, and it was published in 1903, so it's way before I was born. Now, P.J. Wodehouse is a favorite author of mine. I began reading the Jeeves books when I was a kid, like, I don't know, 9, 10, 11, something like that. And I have read some of the Blandings books, but I haven't really read anything else by him. And this is one of his earliest books, and when I say one of his earliest, I mean it's the second book he ever published. And the earliest book I read from him that was not that was the first Blandings book, Summer and Lightning, which was published in 1929. So this is much earlier. And you can definitely tell that it's P.J. Wodehouse, but he has yet to come into his style. Like, if I didn't know it was P.J. Wodehouse, I might have said, oh, this reminds me of P.J. Wodehouse, and then I wouldn't have been surprised when I found out it was P.J. Wodehouse, like, if for some reason I didn't know who had written it. But we can definitely tell that it's P.J. Wodehouse. Was just the way he describes characters is so perfect. He is so good at just like taking like a character and instilling them into this perfect representation of who they are without making it super stereotypical. Like, obviously, this isn't something that you could really do in a more serious novel. All his novels are humorous, but he is so good at it. He is just so good at it. And of course, there are turns of phrase that only PJ Woodhouse does. However, there are also some things I'm not enjoying. I forgot to say I'm 29% of the way through the book. It's a very short book. It's like 136 pages. So this is a school story, and I really enjoy school stories, or at least I think I do. I did not like Mallory Towers by Enid Blyton, or Annie Blyton, however you say her first name, because all the characters are super mean to each other. But I love the Chalet School series. Like, crazy. I loved Autumn Term at whatever it was called by Antonia Towers. I loved The Naughtiest Girl at School, or no, it wasn't The Naughtiest Girl at School. It was something not by Enid Blyton, but with a similar plot. I haven't read The Naughtiest Girl at School yet. And the main thing I really liked about Harry Potter was the boarding school setting, and I was disappointed that there wasn't more of it. So I do like school stories. But this is how could I forget? Oh my god, I almost forgot one of my most favorite series of all time. And that is because I literally just forgot the name. Okay, I don't know, there's this series that I read when I was a kid about this boy who goes to school. I forgot what it's called, but it was very funny. Very addicting. But, yeah, I just find boarding school stories kind of addicting. But my problem with this one is kind of in the boarding school setting, because it follows too many characters. Like, in general, I find in boarding school stories, you follow one character or set of characters. Like, even in the Chalet School, where we do start out by following one character, and eventually, like, it's like, oh, and here's the school 20, 30, 40 years later, we're still, even if we're jumping around characters, we're still in each book, we're following a very small set of characters, like 1 to 3, 4 characters. So this book is not doing that. It's following a bunch of characters. So our characters are mainly, from what I can figure out, and remember, this is a short book. It's 136 pages. So for what I can figure out, 29% of the way in. So we have Gwyneth, who is the head of his house, and he has and his best friend Marriott, who's the second to him, and then each of them has this younger kid that they're looking after. So Gwyneth has his 14-year-old uncle, who we did not know his existence beforehand, which I find is crazy. Like, you never met your grandfather? You never met your own uncle? That's crazy to me. But I guess you just kind of have to, like, assume that would happen in this time period and culture, but that's so crazy to me. Like, how do you not even know of his existence? That's the dark. Anyways, so his name is Farney, and he's 14 years old, and he is just a troublemaker. He is the epitome of a troublemaker. And so they're, like, the kind of the two main characters we're following, and then we're following their kind of counterpart, so Marriott and his aunt's friend's son, who is 13, and it's his first time in boarding school, but I forgot his name, Wilkins or something like that, and he is not a troublemaker per se, but he's unusual, that even though that it's his first time in boarding school, he's like he knows what he wants, he's confident, and he's ready to get it. And so he kind of takes on the Billy of the form. And then, so that's good. And then we're also, it seems like we're following some guy named Pringle, who's helping his friend cheat on a poetry writing contest. And that's what's being hard for me. Like, it's too much for the book. We're jumping around all these characters and conversations and settings like crazy, and so it's not really coming to a full story. While I'm enjoying seeing the scenes, and I love Varney. He is so funny. It's just we never really get time to settle into anything, much less to understand it. And of course, I realize that if I were aware, if I were the intended audience of this, aka upper British class boys in 1903, I would probably I would definitely be able to settle down into it more so, because I would understand more of what's going on. Despite reading a lot of boarding school books, it can be hard to figure out what's going on because it's such a different culture, and when I say such a different culture, I'm not only talking about upper class British. I'm talking specifically about the culture in the boarding school themselves. And they have their own slang and stuff, and it changes a little from each book to each book depending on what boarding schools the author themselves experienced. So, but yeah. So I would definitely feel more settled, especially with all the cricket stuff that's happening. But I do think it is still a fair criticism to make that we're jumping around too much. It's too much for a short book. It's too many characters, too many plots. You can definitely feel that he's still at the beginning of his writing, because as his writing gets better in the later books, he does still put a lot into short books, but he does it much better, much more smoothly. Hello, it is July 8th, and I am now 58% into A Prefix Uncle. So I actually basically skipped the whole chapter. What I didn't realize about this book is it has quite a lot of cricket. And I know nothing about cricket, and I don't think there's anything wrong or bad in this book having quite a lot of cricket. I have read soccer books that have quite a lot of soccer and really get into how the game is played, and I enjoy them. But that's because I like soccer, and I understand how it's played, and I've played it myself. Like, I do not understand the least thing about cricket. Like, even if I saw a cricket game, like basketball or baseball, I don't enjoy reading about either because I do not understand them, but I can at least tell if something was going wrong. If I saw a cricket game, I wouldn't even be able to tell if something was going wrong. And there was the one chapter that was just cricket. It was just describing the cricket game, so I had to skip it because I didn't understand anything. I just needed to know the relevant information was if the school won and why. And that information I got fine from the next chapter. So then the next chapter is really, so it seems that we're more concentrating now. Hopefully, we're concentrating on these two characters of our prefect Greneth or something like that, and his younger uncle. He's 18, his uncle is 14, Farney, who has decided to make a lot of stupid mistakes, a lot of stupid decisions. And basically the impact of those stupid decisions on this guy who wants to, like, keep the family name he doesn't want to dishonor the family name. So basically, yeah, that's how it's going. I'm most of the time I'm just like, okay, but sometimes there will be just like a twist of phrase that is just so PG Woodhouse, and then it is fun, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I remember why I love PG Woodhouse. But yeah, this is, like I said, this is very early PG Woodhouse, so you don't really feel it as much as in the later books. Okay, so it's July 9th, but I actually finished the book yesterday after I updated you. So, I think I finally, after I finished the book, identified what was my problem with it. Like I said at the beginning, I didn't necessarily have a problem with the fact that it had a lot of stuff going on, but that I felt that in later P.G. Woodhouse books, he was more adept at dealing with having a lot of stuff going on. But now also I realized that this book basically had two main plot lines, and they were both like battling for dominance. And so it wasn't only that there was a lot going on. I feel like he could have dealt with a lot going on probably. But the fact that there were two main plot lines that really had not much to do with each other, if they had nothing to do with each other actually, and they were both kind of just battling for dominance in this very small book. But even in a big book, even in a much longer book, it would just not have made sense to have these two separate plot lines. both trying to be plot A. Like, in his later books, he either has one plot line, or if he does have more than one plot line, it's like the main plot line and like a smaller plot line. You know? Like in TV shows where you have the A plot and the B plot. But this one, it was just, they were both trying to be the A plot and it didn't work. So that's all for that book. I didn't really enjoy it, but it was interesting to read and see how he developed as an author from the very beginning. So, but one thing I found very interesting is this part where they have the cricket season, and that's apparently the summer term, and then the winter term comes around and they start playing football. Remember, this book was written in 1903, and they were describing the football game, and I was like, this doesn't sound like soccer. It sounds like American football. And then he eventually says, yeah, rugby football is way better than association football, which soccer is a shortening of association football, by the way. That's why we call it soccer. And then it turned out they were playing rugby, which makes sense that I didn't know what was going on, because I don't know how rugby works. I know how soccer works. I do not know how rugby works. So that's it. That's the vlog. I read Prefix Uncle I read two very short books, actually. I read A Prefix Uncle by P.G. Wodehouse for having a punctuation mark in the title and for being published before I was born. And I read Sea Otter Sunrise for reading only in the PM hours and having technology on the cover.